Kaya yaksatini takat Johan gonna cheese wuchin khasati Albuquerque a krechat wutian we shidehini yukatankawe a kaye yati yagyeeyí a dene a Navajo yuhasayasa ya hastu inyuk achtatani ya ha yukatanki da a daakahídi tu ye awe ka kleinach a ḵúni Seneca ka'i outletu ka chakuta oe ख़úni yu lakota oe ka'i outletu Woochin yu ʼatudli.átk ade aya yu kawdudliséḵ'w ya dasawe shukát dasawe itcha wasa chaltakatwe shukát ḳu.oo yu ʼatángi tundatani ka tude gachtuti ye awa adat yu tachotank Gwatkin sawe qone yu watan adat we tlingit yu ʼatángi jishagun we jishagun shagun echwasaku tlekaqinach preverb object subject ade owe Wooch ḵút yadutsani ye awa adat yu tachotank ka Jagutat kudzati kwash Cajun inach Cajun awe jagut yede awe kawdudliséciół ya masagach tu sa method you do a sock ya shingik inach ade kawdudliséciół ya ade kawdudliséciół ya Eka TPR aka TPRS aka Accelerated Second Language Acquisition, where are your keys? Paul Creek method. Ye'awe achtundatani chaltakatat yagyeeyí achtuasagu yisaku gorqoneka'i yitletu. Just taiqa ko'a chaltakatat ka gorhatuasagu ya ka yuqatangi qonachawe hachuchyeeti wasa Yegachtusane, Konachoe dat you tachotank. Ya ach Khunkian ach agwash Mohawk Kai has outletu Kleinach dustóow Ryan Miracle. Owe take owe achuni deho Jeremy Green you do a sagwa. Ne Woochin yu ʼatudli.átkin qachosatin. Keltas kelqa Wooch itri ʼatank ike qollingit qinach. Keltahin awe nich yanakut yeel. Yadua kelqa. Qollituasagu qo'a iyu ʼatangi. Wasadu sagu at. Ayati again. Khosaku kwash khataya yu khakwatan apa Tektihi nawe nich khanakut yeel chakuta tektihi nawe nich khanakut yeel ya achtuasaku qo'a wutusu yisaku tektihin nich what nich ya na gut yeel ya takata achtuasaku qa achtuasaku yisaku ade awe yuqit Kayatke nich khugut yeel Wash seqanin nich kukwagut yeel Yew achtuasaku yisaku Ye awa adat yu tachotank ya lakota qa Seneca qa wash Mohawk wash Dene Navajo qa Khosaku Salish tsu qa Hawaiian Ololo Hawaii Shkun hastu jiwu we shkun yi just hastu yuqatangi language medium you do a sago at qa qanachawe adat yu tachotank atina khayati yag we take a hit just lingit yuqatangi a yig ye awe wash we hit teen yagachtutlaq ye o atachtashi ye gurqoti wasa duwasak to Lingit sai khasaku hayastan you duwasak ye o do hiti ye o wa ʼatudli.átk UASI that kwash achtuasagu wuchin khasati yu ʼatángi tin qanakhidu tawasaguan Wooch kitan khasati qahastu ane kaye hayati qayakhte tan ye awe kwash kek ahit yi klingit yu ʼatángi kleich ye qas teach ye oyachtuati awe kwash adegachtu an wuchin yu ʼatudli.átk Wooch in you can tull added Kanach tull added gwalliwe. Yeke gulchisha qiti sa achi you qaya we Albuquerque khwaha tsu yakhiti hatch chili wuke just click gweil yakhwatlaq we pinya khanakane guk wa eqo akakisa I khatege achtu asagu yan mune kakakwaha Tlachik hastu ane kadan tlach konach ḳu.oo awe yu tlalyan khatbu ne qa John qa tlal kadeen atkhwagud just ach itikak ye khat natijan akaya khwata qa ye jakhwane ye khwalatu qa we conference adekhwatu uke aya dasa khwa ach hastu yu ʼatángi daat awe khwa ach Kota Seneca Kaji hastu yu ʻiwatan ada qachaku ʻu ye awe gulchish westudi awe aye wutiansa qa I khwalatu qa ya ach twasagu ach yis khunich khwalla yech tlallach watlaq qa Yeke wasasieti yuhan yid khwaha Okay, yakhsatini
Daya. Kiwasa. Yeah.
Okay
Cruising.
at nachakuch ach 6-4 yikt
Wasakuati, Albuquerque.
ḳu.oo tlallan khatbune ye kawachi tokatal tlallach ye wutian This jayagu ginge atkhwagud qa casino alḳáa daakahídi Tlein a yike hawutian Tlall achwal qa tlall dasach saku ada Gwash yan ye jichwanne yan ye jinchane a itch awe alḳáa tzatich khatguch sati alḳáa kuku poker you do sa tlall saku ada tlall dasach saku ada Chachasatin we kutaka ya kajucha atakaye yeti dakasa tuchacheti gwalchan yacheti kadak achtuasagu gwal an at dustóow at gwal giwe yegachtusa dasoe an at gachtustow an at gachtustow at dasoe tlekach inach an at dustóow at
Teach them something? No? On land?
daakahídi Tlein a yikaya we kajucha aka awe a jiwa jigachtunak kutaka yisikuge kutaka
Roulette ball.
Little ball. Oh.
hechwasaku adawelka yechuji Dúd yagyeeyí, gwarchan yagyeeyí, ká, daak, an, dustóow, yagyeeyí.
Like the 00 or green.
Just number. I think that's
Numbers.
what we should call a number. An, dustóow.
Pretty hot chili.
Okay. Yet achuni gwash just on the side. Gwash ʼatángi to us click. Kakwa. Tlein hin chodena. Okay.
Dene hastu yu ʼatángi ka Lingi yu ʼatángi Wooch yagyeeyí.
Ichwaji naschen kat 1000 tagschuhichen. Just click ye hawutien. Ichwaji hastu ʼatudli.átk nakide. Ḳu.oo ye haswuti. Ye ewe hastu shkashni kitse. Hechwasaku wasa atbune. Gwash kelbushke at naqa ḳu.oo. Hastu naqhas yausadak. Klash kochte. Dach nach awe achun kian. Khosaku we Fairbanks. Wooch gate wutu da Wooch khonechas wusatien. Chudach nach we Gunana Alaska kakaya anaski kak. Wooch has wut the sha. Kleka gwashlu ish katutla. Huch kakitlayech we shinget ani. Kleshayachoti chuwujin khasati cha dusa nakide haswu ati. Atu tu shukát. Okay? That's it. Okay. Gonna cheesh. Let's see. Albuquerque was fun. Good. It was hot. I didn't bring the right clothes, but I didn't really walk around either. We're in a casino, kind of north of town. So. And the conference happened, and then I taught classes, and then I didn't feel like going anywhere. It was 9 o'clock at night by the time I was done. I did walk around. I saw all the gambling things. I don't really gamble. Sometimes I think I should learn to play like poker or sit at like a poker table. I'm just not. I would probably just laugh and give everything away. Cause like, that's what I say. I think you gotta be like really composed, like a good liar, kind of. Be like, is that what they call it, bluffing? Or something? But I just walked around and looked at things. I don't know what would call the. What they call the ones you pull? You don't pull a lever. You just push a button now, but because they have
One-armed bandit.
One-armed bandit. Oh, is that what they call them? Slot machine.
Slot machine, one-armed bandit.
Ginny. Alxáa, daakahídi, maybe. And then I saw the roulette wheel, and I was thinking about like how to talk about that. When you say on dustóow, why would it be dustóow? That's a good question for us.
Does that mean counting?
Yes, but so would dultóow. What would the difference be between dultóow and dustóow? And it's tricky because counting and reading are the same verb. So.
Would it be plus S?
Yes, which is classifiers.
For human and non-human?
No, that's a good question. That's a good.
Is it just more specific?
Yes.
Is it more like a category of?
Not quite.
Plural?
No.
Like changes it from object to like conceptually?
No. It's easier than that, I think. But maybe we wouldn't think of it.
It does the thing instead of people do it?
No, people would do both.
Putting things into categories?
kind of, a little bit, maybe.
More as such rather than.
Yes, kind of. Yes, it's along the
It's
right.
in an order. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
That's getting close, but both would go in that way.
Count cards or count some?
No,
No?
you
Okay.
could just say ʼatudli.átk.
Is this the same every time?
Kind of, a little bit. We're so close. What's left? What could be specific about counting?
Is the difference like choosing one number versus
It's
a series of numbers?
to a certain number.
Mm.
So you could say, ʼxu.oo. I counted the people. ʼatángi. I counted to 20. So that's why I think it should be on dustóow. That's my proposal. I'll put it in writing. The word for a number. Okay. Let's see. Any language questions? Ik ersatini chitwo. Chish hati good. Togesago ha inki negi. Kichdat. Kichdat itosago ha inki negi.
Kuna chute masa kanak kasachan tlach masa ʼatwisku.
Yeah, well.
Just kijin yagyeeyí kanach ʼatángi shukát to kanakín.
Okay.
Kanak yake
Kawdudliséciów.
do the chantiyan has to hasachan.
Okay. Yeah, well. Tlekutsi.
Kanach hatzlahit.
Yeah, well. Okay. Yeah, we ʼatudli.átk teen. Do inu ʼatángi tatke. Petko yiche ʼatwutien. ʼawe. Kawdudliséciów. Gwashidu sak pet. Do inu ʼatán. Wasa ieti. Yagyeeyí waqa. Het wasa ʼatudli. Yechet yasaqa. Ilchakudzi. Khatqa. Ha, gulchish. Aqaqone just atshuktin. Tsuye naqa. Okay. Anybody got language questions? Something you've been thinking about? Or anything you want to share with us?
I'll just share one from that ʼku.oo story. That, I'll tell you about all this later, but Akikan Shamdinuk, he stood up to look, is what it is. Kikan, when I look it up, it's a vantage point or something, but that's how Kanak put it. Akikan Shamdinuk, he stood up to look when he heard that sound.
Oh, to look at what it was?
Yeah, to see if he could, so something new to me. Anyway.
Yeah. I know I heard kika. I've heard kika before.
Yeah.
Like Wooch, kika, hit, and then you get Wooch, kika, hit, ton, and then woosh, ton.
Yeah.
Okay. Jeez.
Also do a song. Halloween costume.
Oh, yeah. Okay, this is a good question. I know we've done Halloween phrases in classes before, and I don't have any that are actually ready to go. I'm glad you asked because there's no class on Wednesday, just so y'all know. What was it? There was something to like dress as. Okay, let's see if I can find.
Is the TV monitor not working?
Oh, it's not even on. That's what's going on. I even came here early. I'll figure. Okay, there we go. Okay, let's see. So I think there's a verb to dress as something, and I think it's going to be an ʼu verb. So under the ʼu verbs, we get owning, living, which I think has to do with like owning land, kind of.
Is that like also ʼatudli.átk?
Yeah, well, yeah, it's like things that were paid for in bulk, kind of. So, but also related. So there's I think there's two main ʼu verbs that we end up with: to buy and to use. And so, let's see. There's ʼat'u, which the word for crest, and there's these things I've been looking for a long time. Then I was watching this Cyril George recording, ʼatángi, and he said daakahídi. I was like, that makes a lot of sense. So, okay, so putting it on, clothing, clan property, yagyeeyí. This is the one that I think would be whatever you're dressing like. So you could say, ʼatudli.átk yagyeeyí. You dressed like a murdering clown, or whatever you're gonna do. Winnie hoots, yagyeeyí. Which leads me to, like, there's been this conversation about, so this is to dress up as something. I think it would work pretty well. So you've got yag and then sh'tu, which means to dress your own self. There's a kind of a cool one here. Let's see if I'll be able to find it. ʼatúch. And so there's a reflexive version of this, which would be to fit yourself into something. And this is the one that some of the storytellers use to talk about yagyeeyí. He's going to fit himself into that hemlock needle. So I do think sh'tu works, but as far as so when you see a verb like this, if we want to turn this into a pattern, I really like turning things into patterns so that we could use them. Oops, hold on a second. I wasn't ready for it. Okay. Okay. So we could take this and we'll change the font. So we've got this, in this case we had hoots to dress like a bear. So what I would do is I would copy and paste that, and then I would use these, we call them brackets, is that what they're called? And that means you can substitute something in there. So this would be just a noun, and this would be, and then underneath it you could say dress like noun. So now you know you could plug any noun in there, and that's how you could say, I think that's what you're wearing for. I think the name nakutsatiyaki has been used. I do think that might be a little bit scary to use that for, because this is a big concept in Lingi. So I think also when you deal, which maybe it was in lots of cultures, I feel like, unless you're talking about scary movies like The Witch, it's kind of a silly concept mostly these days. Although I remember when I was in school, we watched this Hansel and Gretel movie, and like there was that witch was scary, and she was gonna eat those kids. And I was like, "What do we do? I'm scared. What do we do?" But that turned out okay. Okay, so
But
that
seems to me like witches is also used very misogynistically. It's always women. They're always bad or smart or powerful in a bad way. So in that way, I think it's nice to not just throw it around as a fun concept because it was pretty bad at
yeah,
times.
they burned free thinkers, that's for sure, and smart people. So yeah, I do think it's something. What is it, All Hallows Eve or something? Is that where that comes from? So I don't know.
Uh,
What does that
all,
even?
all Saints. The next day is All Saints Feast in Catholicism. So the night before is All Saints Eve, All Hallows Eve.
What is Hallows? What is that?
It's
The holy
holy,
people.
holy
It's an
people,
old
saints.
word.
Oh, the holy people.
Sushitugu.
Oh,
Hallowed ground, that means like sacred ground or blessed or something.
yeah. And so sometimes I guess when we get into some of these holidays, like we might also just sort of say dress a yagyeeyí, right? What if we just said dress up like something day or some? I don't know. Sometimes it gets us away from some of the big heavy concepts, but we can also have multiple names for things, and so um, something to think about. So
Oh, okay. How would you turn that verb phrase then into a noun, like a costume?
I can't hear whoever's in the room.
Oh, sorry. ʼatudli.átk. I was asking how to turn that verb phrase into like a noun, like the costume.
yeah, I guess I would say I would put yesha after it or before it. Yeah, because yesha dana. But now we're kind of ravening around, so. But yesha means imitation. And so maybe. Or I could say, I guess you could say, if you wanted a word for like a Halloween costume, I think you could say on, at, yach, shtu, check my tone, at. Or you could say na'at. On, at, yach, shtu, na'at. So as far as like what we did here, so we found a pattern. So if we go back and just walk ourselves through here. So what we looked up had hoots. So then our next step was to make it something so you could substitute with. When you turn something into a noun, like this is, and this is doing it without even saying like, this will be the official entry in the dictionary. But if you just want to talk about something that you don't know the name of it or it doesn't even need to have a name. So the first part is on, which is a contraction of what? Bueno.
Achin.
A'in, yes, a'in. So a'in, so let's do this one, a'in, which is with it. So with it, then you end up, the pattern is people verb. So that's where you get a name for a camera is an kawdudlisécióఖw, thing that people write with or take pictures with. I'm sure that there's other ones that are out there. So then, when you have this pattern, something yach, and you have a noun there, you could plug in at. So when you say at yach, it's like something. So now you've covered everything, right? And so Tlingit likes to do this. So what you see is this. So what you plug in for this noun, what it's going to be like, a fourth person non-human. And then who's going to do it? A fourth person human. So this is how Tlingit likes to use the fourth person for coming up with names of things, like when you look at a bunch of new names. Telephone, ʼatúnach ʼatudli.átk, the thing that people talk with through. And then once you sort of learn how these parts work, I think it does kind of demystify these really big words for some things. Some things have, because then sometimes we've asked speakers, like, how do you say like a dance staff or something? And I think they said on ʼatudlisécióఖ'w, right? And so you're going to get on in front of it. Very common pattern in terms of what you see. So on yagyeeyí naat. And that could just be at. I think naat, it's usually like an outfit, right? Clothing.
Is it losing the I because it's no longer actually a verb?
Okay, so this you have, let's talk about that. So just kind of isolating this thing. Oh yeah, taking on that characteristic. Yes, we want to be careful. Okay, so this is to dress up the self, right? To put it on the self, basically. So this is what triggers the self, and then that pushes the verb plus D. So you should be able to say ʼatudli.átk, right? I think it's a low tone. And so then you'd say ʼatudli.átk, and you'd say ʼatudli.átk would be they are, and then, oh, whoops, I'm mixing them, ʼatudli.átk. Right, so all these are doing what we expect. So then we can now pluralize these, and we can say ʼatudli.átk, and we can say ʼatudli.átk, and we can say ʼatudli.átk. So all of these are following predictable patterns. And so what's going on here is we got an SH plus, and now we've got 0 de oo. Oops, not 0. So then if I copy and paste this, I've changed this. Well, now I've changed the pattern a little bit. I thought perfective would be a little easier. So then if I go through, I'm doing to I, to 0, to, and y, and then hus, and oops, hus and 0, and then I'll take this one. So if I take this and I change this to do, what now must happen? There must be this will trigger a second change. We're getting into a subject rule, which maybe, we haven't gotten to subjects yet in our verb components thing. We're going to do it next week. And then we'll be up to the classifier, and then we'll start doing all the prefix things.
You reflexive fourth person not use the plus I?
So here's the rule, and the fourth person rule overrides some of the other rules. Okay, so the fourth person rule goes like this. All non-zero classifiers must be plus D all the time. Once it switches to de, that has to be a plus D classifier. All 0 classifiers must be minus D. So here you can't, because you can't go dude, and you can't go duse, dutle, dushe. Just cannot do it. I don't know why. You just can't. So once you switch this to the fourth person to say somebody does it, Now it has to go to a, well, it goes to, it should go to that. But this was a, oh. So maybe it needs to go that. Is that right? To did. Yeah, ʼu. Okay. On ʼatyach ʼu. ʼu na at. Good, I'm glad we did that because then I caught the mistake. Because it should go to a minus D, but if it's a plus I classifier, then it has to switch to ya. Okay. Sounds spooky to me. Okay. Any
In
other?
Tlingit culture, did they have a day, any sort of a general remembrance of the dead, like a Day of the Dead?
Not really. I mean, you have ʼku.oo season, and that's when parted were taken care of. But there wasn't so much. I don't think you find as many like this specific day, this type of thing happens.
Right.
Yeah, it seems to be like this time of year, this type of thing happens. And so you do have a lot of things that happen at ʼku.oo. And some things have been in conflict with other cultures, namely feeding the deceased. Some people get upset when that happens. But that does happen at ʼku.oo.
The way that these phrases are, is it clear that it's for fun as compared to seeing something at a kui where or like at the bombing ceremony in Angoon?
Yeah, that's a good question. Like, so basically, one of, I guess, a phrase you could use for something like that is you could say sagutin, with joy. There is a word, there's a word for pretend, and it's in the new ʼatudli.átk book. And I got it from George Davis. But there's also a verb pattern for pretend and for play, and they're actually kind of similar. How do you say play? Ashkulyat. So that it could be a verb, like they are playing. Usually this is like what the noun form looks like, but you could say kawdudliséciót, and I could say káwdudliséciót, right? And I could change that all the way through, and I could use it in the future. I could use it in different ways. It's a na conjugation verb. What about, well, okay, let's just go look at some examples. So we're going to go into the dictionary. Hold on, let me close a couple things here. Okay. So I was going through, one thing we'll do after our midterm activity, which we're still working on, is I'm going to pull out the common verbs from the verb reference guide, and we're going to conjugate them. But I'm going to reorganize them so that they're by conjugation type. So 0 verbs, na verbs, ga verbs, and qa verbs, just so we could see what that does for them. So I was going through the dictionary and looking at that. But one thing I'd like to do is go down to the English section, and we're going to look at play. So when we look at play, we're going to see a pattern emerge. So to play on swings, you got ashkull, To play violin. Ashkulqja. To play on a seesaw. Ashkulkit'a. To play a jumping or twirling. Ashkulkena. To play boats. Ashkuskucha. To play baseball. Ashkulkisha. To play in the water. Ashkadataja. To play marbles. Ashkultaka. To play sledding or sliding. Ashkushkitla. To generally play. Ashkuchet. To play basketball. Ashkucheta. And then play quietly and to play with your food are a different pattern. So those do exist, but looking at the other ones, what kind of common thing do you see?
We see ʼku a lot.
And
Yeah.
ush.
And ush, right? So if you're to sort of take a look at those, what you have is you're going to have ush plus ʼka, d plus l. Now I think you could put you could throw a noun in there and now you're playing that thing. So I think you could say, I guess it would be aja, maybe, to like play tag, maybe. I don't know if you're supposed to are you supposed to slap them? I don't think so. I thought you kind of did, but that's why all those kids are crying when I go to the playground. But you could put something in there, right? So you look at cheta, the ball, the marble. Although like those ones usually say kucheta and kutaka. So they go through a little bit of a shift. But so if you look at ashkuchet, there's something about being a child. Right, so that's the noun for a child, which is why it stays yet. That one doesn't go long or low, it stays yet all the time. So when you look at some of the other ones, ashkulkena, gain is jumping. So sometimes you get a verb root on the end, and sometimes you just get a noun. So if you are going to play something, and this is usually an active game, which is why the kusuk verb is to sit quietly and play. What's interesting, so this is sort of our pattern, right? Is most of them have this kind of thing. And then there is a way to put verbs together to pretend. ʼatudli.átk is the word that George gave us. And, although I don't think I have this pattern in here yet, so I got some work to do. So let's go to here. So if we go to the Story and Nash dictionary, we look up pretend. So we see, well, there's yesh, to pretend to know what you're doing, but you don't know what you're doing. It's my favorite verb, by the way. It's kind of it's just what I do at life. So, but then you look down here and we get this other set. Pretend to eat, read, to be sick, to be dead. And here you get shukát, shukátú, shukátlaník, shukátlaná, shukátlagut, shukátlajík. So we see another pattern here. What's the pattern for this one?
SHAK or SHK underlined?
Yeah, so.
Adjective, K.
Okay. So here you're going to get SH, this one, and then also a D plus L classifier. And then some kind of, I think you could probably put almost any verb root in there, and you're pretending to do that verb. But and there's something to this. If someone wants to write a dissertation about it, go ahead. But I think it's a pretty cool sort of thing when you look at this. Because There's one of these that we know. So this is to pretend to do this thing. What about this? Oops. ʼatudli.átk.
Like to lie or make me.
That's to lie. But it's literally pretending to raven. Pretty wild, pretty fun.
Could you scroll back up to that pattern? Sheesh.
And so, yeah, this one is play, and this one is pretend. So I think you could probably put like ʼatudli.átk. They played at fishing with a net. But it wasn't real. It was like some kind of play activity. Anyways, kind of fun stuff. Okay. How's this work going with
Slowly.
what's that?
Slowly.
Slowly. Okay. And if there's no class on Wednesday, how far do you think we can get within the next week? We should be at the 1 minute mark, I think, about. Can we finish it? There's no class. There's no class. What are you going to do with all this time you've got?
The transcription, or the transcription, the translation is.
We can work on that together. What is this one? Oops. ʼatángi. ʼatángi. Did anybody get that one?
First word is yes.
Yes, you can tell or you can speak.
I found an uk that meant playing, so I was thinking maybe it meant something like it's playing.
It's rolling.
What is it talking about?
The camera.
The camera.
It's for my future career as a director of Tlingit soap operas. Be ready. Yakanajuk, so it's kajuka. Kajuka is a wheel or a wheelbarrow. Or alkszá kajuka, if I wanted to name the roulette wheel. Let's see what comes next.
Shukát. 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 Shukát.
How many words?
4.
Yeah, daakahídi. What's the first word?
Good.
What's the second one?
Yay.
Yay.
I told.
Yuhan.
Shukát. Shukát.
No.
Oh. And the last word?
Good.
Oh, I should make somebody else drive. Just like get up here and start typing. Or maybe I can have someone put it in the chat. Okay, so this one, so when you're doing this kind of work, sometimes you gotta look ahead a little bit. But we could also look at we know these ones, right? We probably know 3 out of 4 of these words. We might know 4 out of 4 of these words. Any of them we don't know?
I don't know.
Are you? That over there. Like this, are you? It was just it was a long time. Beginning thing, it was a long time ago. But also in the context, it could also a couple different things.
Not too clear on yeah.
What's that?
I'm not too clear on yeah.
Okay. Anybody want to talk about yeah?
Is it like there, that place, or it's like kind of everybody standing in the place?
It's either, I would say yeah is one of two. Let's put this in the notes. So coming back to the notes, I would say this yeah is one of two things. It's place or way. It just depends on how it's being used. So when we say shukát, yeah, now we've got a special combination. And the way it works kind of depends on what comes next, right? So I could say shukát de hogud, and I could say shukát de kawdudliséciół. These are, anybody got any ideas on what these are saying?
So is it towards everywhere I'm going?
Well, I went. So, sunny Tlein, Johnny Cash, alxáa.
I've been
I've
everywhere.
been everywhere. Man.
What about this one? Anybody know kawdudliséciół?
Pedaling. Kicking.
We've been doing a little work on this one just to get a little bit of clarity. Wasa kawdudliséciół? Āxkudatsi. Alxáa.
Oh, color.
So this is a question. And you could also say daat kawdudliséciół, which actually reveals the pattern for the answer. So now I could say color noun, kawdudliséciół. It is blank. It's ʻéishk, ʻtsu, ʻqan, ʻtsakwat. But what about shukát de kawdudliséciół?
Every color.
Every color?
All kinds of colors, right? So shukát de, you gotta, like once you hear this, like if you're doing this type of work, you're like, okay, it's either all kinds or all different ways or all different places. We gotta get to the verb.
So, sorry.
Really sorry. What?
If I said shukát de kawdudliséciół, is that correct? If I said we kudas shukát de kawdudliséciół, would that mean that kudas was every color, or would that mean that
All kinds of colors, not every color.
Okay.
And so I'd be, in my brain, I would see like a tie-dye shirt though, or something like that.
Okay.
Okay, let's get to the verb. The verb will set us free.
Yeah, ʻatángi ʻatángi. Yeah, ʻatángi ʻatángi.
So I'm going to suggest we start right here.
ʻatángi ʻatángi.
How many words? Anybody want to put anything in the chat? You just write the whole sentence for me. I got two little cuts on my fingers, so you could, yeah. I'm rough. I don't know why I'm so rough on my fingers. Maybe it's just so that you guys will do more typing for me. Oh, cook. Ach, dich ach, Oh, let me check the chat. Okay, goose cheese. Okay, so we are gonna let's listen to it again.
Isingit ʼatna.átk.
Anybody want to suggest any adjustments? Okay.
Probably space after that.
Anything else? These are acceptable suggestions. Maybe say them a little louder though.
Is it a high tone I?
Is it two A's and AA? Not at?
Isingit ʼatna.átk.
I could see how I could maybe hear it a little long, but I think it is. I think they're both short. But I would make 2 more adjustments here. At the beginning and at the end.
Isingit ʼatna.átk.
He does say yay the first time.
Should it be low down?
Now I got one more change.
Does Jin have a high tone?
I think we're good on tones here.
Is
Maybe
it like a CH? Not a chin?
it was. So let's talk about what we got going on here. So we go down. So here, this is the thing we want to sort of look at. So I could there's different ways I could say this. I could go ya naat, that's acceptable. I could say ʼatudli.átk, that looks good. And now to get us closer to where we end, we could say, let me bring this down. Ya. Now we got na'atch. So na'atch can become na'atchin. So do we know, whoops, well, I don't want to put the husses in here, okay. Klinget at ya na'at. And do you want to offer a translation for any of these 4 phrases?
I think when I was looking, I thought it said, those Klingits, they went there regularly or something.
So let's talk about where they're going. So this one is a little tricky because you could say, let's just switch this to a singular person. You could say ʼat'uwagut, and you could also say ʼat'wugut, and I think the bottom one is more common. But both of these are correct, but they're saying different things, which is why it gets a little tricky, because these are technically 2 different things that sound exactly the same and are spelled exactly the same. ʼat'uwagut and ʼat'wugut. So ʼat'uwagut would be they arrived there. Usually you're going to see ḥa't-uwagut or neilt-uwagut, something like that. Here, they walked around. I think we used a variation of this verb towards the beginning of class when someone said cruising. And I said at nachakuch ach 6-4 yikt. Cruising in my 6-4. Okay. So this ut is this one. So when you say ʼatna.átk, Tlingit as a group of people
Think people were migrating all the time?
always walk around or go around. They always walk around. So here you'd say Tlingit walked around. Tlingit are walking around. That gets us to the final one, ʼatna.átk.
Is it decessive?
It is. What does that mean?
Okay, that means it already happened, but it's over now.
Yeah, so this is a suffix that means used to but not anymore. Right? So you could say if you're in the dramatic soap opera universe. I used to love you, but I don't anymore. But in this case, Tlingit used to walk I used to always walk around.
So then it can be habitual and decessive at the same time.
Yes, you can used to always do something, but then you don't anymore, right? And so, and these are fun. They are fun the way that some of these things can stack up like that. So coming back, now we know, we kind of got a whole sort of thing now. Yagyeeyí ayu, Tlingit ʼatna.átk. So when we do our translation work, sometimes we end up with like a little bit here and a little bit there. If we're going to publish that, we might change, if you really study the work of ḳ'x'ne and ḥwayinaq, they would switch them. They would say, this is how you'd say the same thing in English. And let's revisit that for a second. One of their purposes was, when they were working in the 1970s, Tlingit literature was, I wasn't going, well, I guess I was going to school then, but it was not allowed in school. They were not, like my kids go to school, they learn dultóow, they learn so much stuff because of all this incredible work. But back then, Tlingit stories, that's not for school, no way. So part of their mission was to say, Tlingit stories are it's a high level of literature. So in their translation work, they didn't want it to look like, they didn't want it to sound like a direct word-for-word translation. So they kind of applied some poetic license and flipped the word order quite a bit.
And so, when you that habitual, you say always, where Eggleston says every time.
Yeah, I think.
It's the same. And what about niche or niche?
So yeah, for me, that's a good question. So like, if we have, let's see. So we could say na'atchin. So like na'atch, and then you could say akaniknuch. I think that's how you say that. Akaniknuch and akanan. So this is something worth studying. It's like which verbs like to use the nooch or the niche or the niche. There's different ways to say that. And which ones just use the CH. But as far as like, I don't see a big difference between those two, between something that ends with nooch and something that ends with CH. The grammar that you use to put it together is different, but I think the meaning is the same. And it's sort of like all the time, like, and it doesn't always mean like every single time, but it's like, yeah, would always do it. Because then you have you could use a repetitive and say they do it regularly. Then this is like more frequent than that. But what gets really interesting is if you look at the stories, you really study those stories, sometimes you'll see someone saying this, but they're really saying they used to do that. So you don't always see this part on there. But I think it's a good idea for us to use it and to use this as like, it happens all the time. whenever you say like chakuk or kakyagi or something like that, when you say like all the time, then you should end up with some sort of habitual. Okay. Now we gotta translate this. Oh, we're almost to 30. Well, this will get us to 30 seconds, folks. Yagyeeyí.
Everywhere? Those Klingits used to walk around there.
Go around. I guess, yeah, go around, right? And so when you put it together, if you want to put it together for your English phrase, the Tlingit used to walk all over the place.
Mhm.
Okay. Any questions about that?
So does that mean they were just walking, or does this mean they migrated a lot? They were nomadic.
I think what he's saying is people used to just walk all over and when you got the walking around part, I think now you're getting into like exploring the land, going all over the place. So like you think of what is Tlingit, it's a big, huge piece of land, and people used to walk all over the place. And so it kind of depends, like, and so this is the framing of the story. We're just really getting, these are the first lines of this story. And it's saying like people used to walk all over the place. And like in terms of like what he's saying, it's probably a combination of like everywhere they went, they walked, but also they used to just go all over, like everywhere on the land. And so this, I think it sets up what's going to come a little bit later, but it's also just sort of saying like, there's not a piece of land here that people haven't been to. Like sometimes in certain classes, they like to go out on these outdoor adventures, and sometimes people say, well, I want to go where no one's ever been. And I'm like, well, get into the Star Trek ship and head on out, because people have been everywhere here. I don't know. But I guess where people don't usually go. But it's also like there's a fascination with that, maybe.
Maybe up to the edge of the ice.
Oh, yeah, I guess you could go where the glacier melted. You go down there. People might not have been there. They're probably there at some point. Okay. Ready for the next line?
ʼatudli.átk. ʼatudli.átk.
Do that one first.
ʼatudli.átk.
What's the next one? Tlein.
Yeah, T.
And there's a little bit more.
Maybe pinched X? Oh, no, okay.
Maybe two more words.
Aya.
Aya.
Aya at duwa.óo.
ʻatudli.
Aya.
Yeah.
Battle of the alḥáas. Yeah.
If to be fair, I've talked with him a lot, so.
ʼatudli.átk.
Oh, let me check the chat. Maybe someone has already written this out for us. KKTIU. Oh, okay.
Should we be using like their little I guess visual representation of the sound more, because maybe our ears kind of change it in our heads.
What do you mean?
Like
Our ears change in our heads?
like like auditory like illusions and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas like two ayahs might sound the exact same or different to us when they're actually different, or they're actually the same, but we can check if they're the same or different.
Yeah, tlekati, that's what, and so, but also like, and and I've been wrong on a whole bunch of things. I'll say that when I do this type of work, and sometimes I'll come back years later and be like, oh man, how come I didn't hear that? And so, but also some of us have been doing this we've done this a lot too. So
ʼatudli.átk.
I want to get this part. That's 2 words.
Yeah.
It's 2 words.
Yeah.
Okay. The committee will accept The judges have allowed We need another word then.
Yach.
That is
Is
close.
it ya?
Okay, how are we spelling this? And then I'll.
Y A. Yeah. I don't.
We need 2 more characters.
AX. AX.
That is very close. I need something
A.
done with that X. It's like the cousin.
Underline X.
Underline.
There it is.
We'll listen to it again now that you've written it all out again. Oh, so I kind of don't believe he's saying all that.
He is a fast talker. That's true. And so if you haven't done this work a lot, don't be surprised like if there's a lot of sort of differences in what you were hearing and then what's being written. I do believe this work, the more you do it, these are big, huge steps to take in a language journey. And like I think it does really help.
Yeah, because I keep on hearing gutty there, so I was wondering if maybe I take like the little sound wave pictures and compare it to like an actual gutty, so I could notice like
Gutty?
Yeah.
Oh.
It's just my head doing that because it kind of.
He says tlekati, yeah. Tlekati.
I think it's the X kind of messing with my head because like it sounds like more of a. I don't know the technical term, but it sounds like a harsher consonant, so it changes the to go.
Yeah, I heard kawdudliséciół.
Like tlekati?
No, K. Kei.
Tegati?
Kei. Gutty. Like that.
I heard Clegati.
I heard Kate Letty, so I was like way off.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Tlekati, Kekati, are you? Okay. Goodness cheese. Let's get to the end of this one.
ʼatudli.átk.
ʼatudli.átk.
I would say 2 words. There are 2 words here. The committee has met and decided to not say. Yeah, well.
ʼatudli.átk.
How would we spell that?
I had KADOOWA.OO.
Kutsa.
ʼatudli.átk.
I need a consonant that is a little bit different.
Underlined K.
And what's
Some kind of funny K, like underlined or pinched.
cousin of that other K? What's our vowel?
Sometimes it's an X. K is kind of
Sounds like a W to me.
duwa.óo.
That's close.
I heard A.
X.
ʻatudli.átk.
You? Oh, you?
He
Let's
said,
go through the alphabet.
ʻatudli.átk. 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 ʻatudli.átk.
Okay. Back K. O. ḳu. Oh no, just duwa.óo.
A, vowel stop, ʻO.
ʻatudli.átk. ʻatudli.átk.
I tone OO.
ʻatudli.átk.
I tell you. Oh, no. One, does Anafahash add those A's? Is that like a speaker preference?
I think it's pretty common. And so let's walk through this and so that we could see. Again, like you have a 5-minute clip of audio with like a high fluency speaker. This is the hardest stuff. Like after doing this stuff a bunch, like it's it levels you up a lot, especially if you know, and whenever we do this work, like you're not alone with it. You'll learn a whole bunch of very common phrases, like when you see yagyeeyí. So what you have there, you have one. With yagyeeyí, I want to talk about this for a sec. So you have yagyeeyí and yagyeeyí. So if you said this, yagyeeyí, what might that be?
Are you sharing a different screen?
Oh, probably. Oops, not that either. How's this? How's this? Yeah.
Okay.
Number 3, tell them what we have. Okay. Naskiti. What do you think?
There were 3.
There was 3.
There are 3. So then, oops. Naskiti who's cake.
3-legged dog.
3-legged dog. So what this YI does is it's turning this verb into an adjective. And so with this one, it gets, so one being, and this one is one of them. It's a little complicated, but ʼatudli.átk is, you would say, well, it's a narrative device, I guess. It works really well, like ʼatángi, which some people say as ʼatángi. On its own, it means once, like just ʼatángi away kakwanik. I am only going to tell you once. So it's the number of times something happens. But in the context of a storytelling, you could say ʼatángi away, one time, blah, blah, blah. ʼatángi, there was one of them. So I'm going to collectively translate this as there was one of them. But it's a narrative device that is very similar to when you start a story with like one time, you know, which is like, what are you really saying? You're just cueing someone that you're telling a story, I think. Once upon a time, right? ʼatudli.átk. So what is yagyeeyí?
The lakeshore.
The lakeshore. Which gets us to ʼatudli.átk. This is a very common thing for Tlingit to do, and here's the general pattern. Name what the place is, and then what this is saying, there. So I might say shukát Skagway, I was born there. So Tlingit really likes to do this, I think, where it says it goes back to this place. And then you get ʼduwa.óo. Do we know
One of them
Live there.
lived at the lakeshore?
But this isn't one of them. This is like at that place. So
Right, there was one of them.
yeah, think of this part as like once upon a time. Even though it literally says there was one of them. This is really just saying, I'm going to tell you a story. Are you? There was one of them. And I don't know, I guess.
Someone lived at the lakeshore.
Well, what is.
The verb is fourth person. So
Yeah.
it's not one of them. It's
People lived.
people lived, or they lived at the lakeshore.
So in terms of like, I think for clarity, when we go back into Elan, we'll say, one time, the lakeshore, people lived there. Something like that, right? And it's not like one time, but like these, and as you go forward and you translate stuff and people hire you to make books and all that other kind of fun things, you have to make some decisions on how you interpret this stuff. And you're going to hear storytellers who start, and you could just say, like in terms of what do you write there, and then what do you sort of see? Like, so if you're teaching this stuff, it's always interesting. Okay. Any questions? So by Monday, how far do you think we should try and get? I want you guys to 2.5 minutes? Minute 30 seconds?
Are they 30 seconds?
What's
Yeah.
15 seconds?
Yeah.
In 7 days, could you get to the 2-minute mark?
I think if I really pushed myself, I might be able to get to 1:45 based on where I'm at now.
Okay. Let's try that.
That would be a lot of pushing.
And don't stress, just see what you're hearing. And then also, we've been looking at our verb components chapter, which I'll pull up here eventually. So I think what we'll do, so here's our verb components handbook. We have looked a little bit at the chapter on conjugation. We're going to talk about that next week, just in terms of like, what do you do with all of this stuff? And what does it all mean? And how do you keep it in mind? And how do you use this to start putting the language together yourself and recognizing things? So we'll talk about this big chart, why it exists, what it means, and then we'll also talk about the subject. So there's no class on Wednesday, and you're going to try and get 1 more minute, maybe 1.5 minutes of this ḳaqīt story transcribed, and then just translation. And it's okay if we're not going for any sort of perfection or accuracy sort of thing. We're just trying it out, and then going through it together and talking about what we're hearing and how to sort of one of the toughest parts, I think, of Tlingit is catching where the words separate and then how to sort of start hearing some of those things that are there. And the more you listen to particular speakers too, like you'll catch them. And like and sometimes you'll be in the moment and they'll be talking to you and they'll ask you if you understand that, right? Which it's fun. It's fun. It's also I don't think it's too scary. I think it's really fun, and I think you all are super smart.
I have a question.
Oh.
Do you have a suggestion about when we're in Elon to slow it down a little bit, but it doesn't distort it, so you can maybe catch like the end sounds on some of this stuff? I mean, because that's kind of crucial sometimes, but when I slowed it down, it started to get really cartoony and not helpful.
Yeah, so I mean you can, so like if you go to controls, you have your rate here, and so you can get it if you could start going less than like 70 though, like it's slicing it into pieces is kind of what it's doing.
Mm.
ʻatudli.átk.
But I think that can help, especially like as you listen to it. And then when you're doing this work and we're outside of class, like headphones, trying to limit the amount of sort of distractions that might be around you, and going, go in and try it for like 15, 20 minutes, go take a break, drink some water, get some air, come back and try it again. And because this is a big step is to go from like learning Tlingit and all these little parts to like saying, okay, write down what this person is saying, who's like one of the greatest living Tlingit speakers. And
So when we're going through the first time or when I started actually transcribing it, I was just trying to get the sounds down without even worrying about spelling it correctly and getting it perfectly, which kind of was relaxing. And then I looked at it and it was like, but these aren't actual words that I can find.
Yeah, I had that problem too, repeatedly.
But on the other hand, it was like, well, at least I'm listening really well and I'm trying. So,
well, I think, yeah, because now we're trying to exercise our like the whole language part of our brain in terms of being a listener. And so I think it's like if you just sat there and did a bunch of basketball drills, but you had never played basketball before. And then we just threw you out there and everyone's running full speed and it's just like, and so it's a lot. And I think it's a huge step. And I think no matter how it goes, like just sort of just be in the process and just believe that there's a future where you'll be able to hear that stuff with a lot more accuracy. And that's why it's fun to do this, I think, with like 15, 20 people, because we'll be like, oh yeah, okay, cut this, cut that. And then as we go through, because also like the language, it functions a lot differently when it's in a whole language situation. Like, so this is, so we'd been gathering, just to give you a little backstory, in Tlein, and we were doing a series of classes, I think. This was in the December of several years ago, 10 years ago maybe. And then we said, well, let's get the speakers in here to just sort of talk to us. And then we set up the cameras and stuff. And we said, okay, go. And we had several different sessions, but this was one where I think they did 3 stories, Nashahash and Chukateen. And so he tells this story, which is beautiful, and Chukateen tells the woodworm story, which is also beautiful, but was a longer story. Then he tells us others, like the Kushka singing under a rock, I guess. So,
you had said we couldn't collaborate previously. Are you going to let us help each other?
Yeah, you can. You guys can.
Okay.
For the next minute and a half. For the next minute and a half of this recording, you can talk to each other and work
But
together.
I'm sure that everybody has noticed, especially like Beth, who sounds like she's been listening to it a lot, is like every once in a while you do hear a word and you're just like, oh, gugank. I know that word. That's a great one. It's like, I do know something. It's so rewarding.
And you guys know a lot more than you might feel like. It is a bit of a daunting process to move from, writing, but if you keep doing this, you'll be able to listen to people talk and just write down what they say. And you'll actually, it increases your translation skills as well. So that when someone says something and someone asks you what they said, you'll actually be able to more easily tell them that. Like it's a whole process, yeah. Gadachi Shuhan, Yewushkach Tustin a'iti asandikak. You guys can show up on Wednesday and work together if you want to. It's all good.
I'll show up at least for a while, and then I can, look at whether we have G's or K's or pinched or underlined and what vowels we have. And
One of the things we haven't done in this class is shared each other's emails. So there's hardly any way, I can't speak English generally, to communicate with each other, other than in the chat. So if
Well,
you, other than Discord, which I don't know, that's too hard.
Are you discordant on the Discord? Okay, so if you guys want to, I can stop the recording and then you could put it in the chat and I'll erase it before I put the chat up. So we can just hang out for a few minutes and just share emails.
Could we willingly put it with our names in our little, what do you call it, spreadsheet?
That might be.
Oh yeah, okay. Here, let me start a
Because where we put our sentences.
That's how we did it a few classes
okay,
ago.
so